Okay, so our next topic is error handling. A compiler is supposed to detect invalid programs and for the valid programs translate it to the machine code, right? And so if how does it detect the invalid programs, and if it does, then what does it do is the subject of today's discussion. So here are some examples of possible errors, and I'm going to use the C programming language to as an example. So there could be, for example, lexing errors. So the first thing to note here is that the errors can occur at any stage of the compilation pipeline: lexing, parsing, semantic analysis, and so on. And here's an example of a lexing error: foo $bar. Now, no token. I mean, so this string. I mean, you cannot divide this string into tokens because there is no valid tokenization of this string of characters in C, and that's primarily because of this $sign here, which cannot be a part of the identifier, and also it's not an operator. All right, so something like this will be flagged by the lexer, and as we know, a lexing tool will be implemented as maybe a finite automaton, and the finite automaton is going to tell us that there is no possible token that can be emitted for this string, and that would be an error. Okay. Here's an example of a parsing error. So in this example, ABC star %3, you will be successful in converting a stream of characters to a stream of tokens, but it would be hard. You won't be able to construct a parse tree from the stream of tokens. So in this case, there is no parse tree for such an expression, because an expression should have a single operator and two identifiers or constant or something like that. But in this case, we have two operators, and that's a problem. So this would be reported as a parsing error. And once again, what's a parsing error? Well, there is no derivation from the start symbol to this expression, or from the expression symbol to this string, and so or the stream of tokens, and so it's a parsing error. And then there are some errors that will escape both lexing and parsing, and but they will fail the semantic analysis phase, right? So here's an example. So here you have two statements. The first statement declares a variable x, and the second statement applies x to argument 3 as though x was a function. Now there's nothing wrong with it in terms of parsing, because this is a valid this is a valid program. It has two statements, and the first statement is a declaration and the second statement is an assignment expression. Just so happens that the assignment expression involves a function call, but the parser is not actually checking whether x is actually a legal function or what's the type of x. That's the job of the semantic analysis phase, and that's when the compiler will tell you that this is an error, and in this case it would be a type error. Notice that all these three categories of error, whether they are lexing, parsing, or semantic analysis errors, we commonly know them as syntax errors. And then there's a fourth category of errors that are correctness errors. That could be just that whether your program is actually behaving correctly on all the inputs or not. For example, if you write a sorting function, is it behaving equivalent to a quicksort function or not? Now, something like that is beyond the scope of a compiler. It is, and something like that is the subject of testing or verification, and so that's beyond scope of a compiler. Just for completeness, we should mention that there are other types of errors that the compiler will never be able to catch. All right. So first of all, the compiler needs to have some error handling logic. It needs to do something when it sees an error. What is it that it's supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to at least report the error to the programmer, that there was an error in a program. Here is where the error is. Secondly, it should try and recover from the error, and so that it can move on and parse the rest of the program and analyze the rest of the program from its semantics point of view. And the third important kind of requirement of an error handling subsystem is that it shouldn't slow down your compilation process, right? I mean, the compilation should not become too slow because of your error handling mechanism. And we're going to see some examples where it may become slow, some modes of error handling where it may become slow. So here are some kind of common modes of error handling. One is panic. So in the panic mode, the compiler is supposed to report the error, B, try to move on from that report. So maybe try to parse the rest of the program, and that's it. That's all the compiler is supposed to do, and this is largely the most common way of handling an error in compilers. The other approach is error productions and error recovery. So here the idea is that you try and guess what the error is, and you try to firstly recover from that error, and also tell the user that okay, this is what it looks like. And some compilers will actually go further and say they will try to automatically correct the error for you, and that would be error correction, automatic correction. There are some errors that can be easily skipped over, and you can tell the programmer, and it is at best a guess what the error is, right? Because the compiler cannot go into the head of the programmer to figure out what the error is, but at least the guess is given to the programmer. And the third case, the compiler actually goes a step further. It says, okay, I'm going to try and correct the error for you. And now this is a much more expensive mode of error handling. It will typically slow down your compilation, but and it's not even clear whether something like this is actually practical to use or not. We're going to see some examples. Alright, so what is the panic mode? Well, on encountering an error, we discard the tokens until a clear role is found. Alright, so if we see an error, which means that we couldn't parse a set of tokens, we couldn't construct a parse tree out of it, we try to discard a few tokens and see if we discard the tokens, does it start parsing again? Sometimes we discard the token until a next role is found, right? And then we try to continue from there. So what do I mean by a role? Well, imagine, for example, the semicolon operator in the C language or many other imperative languages like C++, Java, etc. So if I have an error, maybe I want to ignore all the tokens till the next semicolon token and then continue my parsing from there, right? So that would be one way of handling a parsing error. Okay. So here's an example of a panic mode error. So you have 1 plus 2 plus 3. Now here the compiler is going to notice that there is an error because there are two operators plus that are occurring together, and something like this is not allowed in our context-free grammar. And so what the compiler could potentially do is it could skip one token. So for example, it could skip one of the plus signs, right? And if it skips the plus sign, then it's going to now start looking like 1 plus 2 plus 3, and this would be a valid expression, right? Alternatively, it could have skipped two tokens. It could have skipped both plus and 2, and in fact 3 tokens, and then it could have interpreted it as 1 plus 3, and this would have also have interpreted nicely for the compiler. Now, the compiler is kind of free to do whatever it likes in this example. It could either omit 1 plus token, or it could omit 3 tokens and completely omit part of the sentence. It is whatever it does, it is supposed to tell the programmer that there was an error. The job of omission is only so that it can continue and parse the rest of the program, so that if there are more errors, then it can report all the errors in one go. Typical compilation times could vary between few seconds to few tens of seconds or even minutes. And so if you see an error, it is not such a great idea to just stop compilation right there. You want to continue from there so that you can report multiple errors to the user in one go. So then the user can then fix all those errors hopefully and then retry. And so that's what this idea of kind of skipping tokens so that the sentence starts parsing again is all about. But how many tokens to skip? Actually, it turns out that parsing tools allow users to specify context-free grammars with a special error token, right? So you can have a special error token and say, if you see an error, you can match these set of tokens with the error identifier. Think of the error token or the error identifier as yet another non-terminal, and it can match with some things. And then, but it is a special non-terminal. It's not your regular non-terminal in your context-free grammar. It's a special non-terminal because it has special semantics associated with it. So here's an example. So let's say I have a grammar E can either produce an integer int, maybe integer constant like 3 or 4, or it could produce a sum, a plus operator with two e's on the left and right, or a parenthesis, a parenthesized e. Or if none of these, then I could say it's an error int, which basically means that if you hit an error, then skip till the next integer, right? So this is a way of the programmer to specify what to do in an error. So in this case, it's saying that e can match with some error and followed by an int, in which case it should skip the error, all the tokens until the next int. So this is what it means. If you say error int, it means if you hit an error, skip all tokens until you hit the next int, right? The other production here is open parentheses, error, close parentheses. This means that if you see an error while parsing any expression within the parentheses, then you skip all the tokens within the parentheses, and then just kind of consider that as something that we have completely skipped, and then use the surrounding parentheses and go on and parse the rest of the expression as you would otherwise. Now, in the example that we just saw, if we have 1 plus 2 plus 3, now what will happen here is that there will be an error when it parses plus plus, and so it could say, okay, I'm going to skip. So it's going to find an error at this point and say, okay, I don't know how to interpret this plus because this cannot form a part of a parse tree. And so I'm going to skip to the next integer. And in this case, for using this grammar, what I'm going to get is 1 plus 2 plus 3. Okay, so error is going to match all the error keyword is going to match all the skip tokens. In this example, the skip token would be plus. Now let's take another example. Let's say the expression, the erring expression was 1 plus 2 plus something like this. All right. And in this case, once again, there will be an error at this point because I don't know how to interpret it. So maybe I will match it with error, and so I'm going to cross it out. Then I'm going to cross out till the next integer. In this case, the next integer is 2. So this is fine. And now I'm going to try to interpret 1 plus 2 plus. And once again, I'm going to hit an error because I don't know how to interpret this. Now, so again, I'm going to hit an error at this plus. And this time I'm going to again see, I want to skip some tokens. So how many tokens should I skip? Well, I could either skip until the next integer, but there is no next integer, or I could skip until the next close parentheses such that the whole expression is matched under the open parentheses. And in which case, this entire expression will get skipped because the whole entire expression will match error. And so this whole thing would match with E. And so if this was going with another plus 2, so this will be passed as error plus 2, which means something was skipped and then plus 2, and so now the parse tree looks okay. If there was an error in the outer parse tree as well, then that would get reported. Otherwise, the compiler is not going to report any more errors after that. Okay, so these type of productions that involve the error keyword are also called error productions. Okay, so what are error productions? You specify known common mistakes in grammar. Now there's one approach that is going even further, and it can say that I'm going to actually not just use the error token, but I'm going to also have productions that are actually erroneous, but I'm going to accept them. And here's a common example. So let's say you have, in your language, you want to have the star operator to specify multiplication. So if you want to say 5 into x, you need to say 5 star x. But maybe mathematicians like to just write 5x instead of 5 star x, and that may be a common mistake in your programming language. If you are a programming language designer or a compiler designer, and you know that this is a common mistake that people tend to omit the star operator and just write two expressions together, then they may choose to include a production that accepts such a production. So here's an example. The programmer, the compiler writer, could add a production saying E produces EE, and in which case it should interpret as the first E multiplied by the second E. Now this is a bit controversial because you're basically changing the syntax of the language itself. Second, you are encouraging programmers to make mistakes. If you kind of start accepting such mistakes, you kind of not letting the programmers know that this is actually an error, and so you're kind of encouraging them to do this. Thirdly, maybe the programmer didn't intend this way of writing his or her program as a multiplication, but something else, maybe a function application, in which case we are not going to interpret it like that. The common response to something like this by compiler developers is to accept something like this, but also warn the user that we accepted it like this. Maybe still throw a compilation error, but move on, right? So these are another form of error productions. Here, such productions may to kind of summarize. Such productions may be acceptable. The compiler writer may want to accept such productions, may want to allow such productions, but whenever such a production gets triggered, the compiler writer may want to warn or throw an error to the user, so the user knows that this is a problem, but the compiler may still compile the program with that error message or that warning. Alright, so disadvantages of error productions: A, it complicates the grammar, and B, it promotes mistakes. Alright, there's a third mode or third idea on how to do error handling, and this actually used to be a very active research area, especially in the early days of the computing, especially in maybe 1980s or something like that, where people were, programming errors were common, and people wanted to kind of find automatic ways to fix those errors. It's not such a popular area today primarily because perhaps automatic fixing of errors is not so practical, and sometimes it actually leads to wastes programmer time rather than helping the programmer, and so it becomes controversial at that point. But here is the idea: in error correction, you can either insert or delete tokens up to a given edit distance. So you may say that, okay, I'm allowed to add or delete up to maybe 2 tokens, such that the program starts compiling and making sense again. All right, and in this case, the idea is maybe the compiler is going to do a brute force search, right? So it's going to try and add all different tokens to figure out does the program start compiling nicely after I add this token, or does the program start compiling nicely after I remove this token, or something like that. And that is actually a very expensive procedure because you have to try all different combinations of tokens, and that could be worst case exponential time. And so it drastically also increases compilation time. So the problems with automatic error correction: it often requires exhaustive search, which is expensive. Secondly, it's hard to implement. So it's not just expensive in terms of the running time of the compiler, but it's also hard to engineer from a software engineering point of view of the compilation pipeline. And there's a slowdown during compilation. I should point out what are some practical things that are being adopted today. So, for example, there are languages and compilation frameworks that do try to make suggestions to users. For example, I've noticed such suggestions in languages like C++ or OCaml, where if I have some typo in a variable name, the compiler comes back and says, did you mean this, right? And this is basically one form of error correction. Typically, such mechanisms used by modern compilers are limited to an edit distance of 1, so that the exhaustive search is not overly expensive. It remains very tractable. Also, to throw in some history, there were some old languages that were very finicky about error correction. For example, PLC was one such language, and the idea there was that compilation was something that used to be a very long drawn process. It used to take a long time, because computers were slow and compilers were slow at that time. So this is the PLC language, and so because the compilation itself was so slow, if there was a minor error, it would be very valuable if the computer or the compiler could automatically correct that error and move on. And in cases where it got it right, the programmer would have saved a lot of valuable time. Today, that is not so much of a problem because compilation typically today is not such a inexpensive process. Especially identifying errors is not such an expensive process. It's on the order of seconds or maybe tens of seconds, and so the downside of doing automatic error correction often outweighs the advantages of doing automatic error correction.